All right, questions? Last chance for PA4 questions. I won't be here tomorrow, and I'm getting up at 4 in the morning to travel, so I'm not going to be on late. Yeah?
I have a very special case with my PA4 where if I type to say hello and then press Control D, or I mean, hello, enter Control D, with no punctuation, there's a space at the end. But it only happens if it's the very last word and there's no punctuation.
So I'm not going to test it with a case where I don't end with punctuation, right? If you want to handle it, it's up to you whether you decide to treat end of file as a punctuation and take that last phrase, or you want to ignore it. But I'm only going to test it with cases where it ends with a period or an exclamation mark or something like that. But remember, there's a new line at the end of every input, so there is going to be a new line sitting at the end. So don't get tripped up by that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're reading it until we get Control D or end of file, I'm assuming?
Until you get end of file, and if you're typing in from the keyboard, the way you signify end of file is hit enter and then hit Control D. Right, Control D in the beginning. Get car will return EOF. Yeah.
That being said, can we always assume proper English syntax? So you don't have like comma, 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 or like
No,
dot, dot,
you
dot.
might have comma, 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 dot, dot, dot.
Okay. And will there always be a space after the comma to the next?
Not always.
Okay.
Right,
so
but
you can't assume. Okay.
yeah, but you shouldn't need those things with the way the problem's been described for start a phrase, end a phrase.
Mm-hmm.
Right, if you're looking for the start and you see lots of punctuation, that's not going to start a phrase. Right, if there's no space, that's okay. As soon as you get to a non-space, non-punctuation, that's the start.
But Control D is marked by a caret D, right?
You hold down Control and press D, and get car will return -1, which is what EOF is.
Oh.
So let's actually do that. All right, so just a straight infinite loop. Call get car, print out what it returns. All right.
C is an int.
C is an int because get car returns an int. If you return a car, you'll never see EOF.
Oh, I need to modify it.
Okay, so that might be the whole thing. So if I say ABC, right, C was 65, 66, 67, and 10. 10 is the new line. If I just hit an enter, C is 10, that's a new line. If I hit Control D, C is -1. And that's your EOF. So if I make this a car, it'll do basically the same thing, but if I hit Control D, oh, it returned -1. Well, I got lucky, but it's actually not EOF.
So, is there a function that converts the numbers into ASCII stuff?
It kind of happens automatically.
It does?
Yeah. Let's see, this should not work, but it may work. It even works with car, but that's getting lucky. Make it an int, because it may not always work with a car. What's happening here is getCar is returning an integer. If I declare C to be a character, it's really only setting aside 1 byte for C. And since getCar is returning 4 bytes, it may be overwriting 3 other bytes somewhere. And that could get you into trouble later on. I'm surprised that it's working at all, though. But that's okay.
Okay, and then, so you're saying that automatically, so if I were to do a statement line, if C is equal to, quote, let's say, period,
Yeah, that should work fine.
okay.
So integers and characters are somewhat interchangeable, but if you're in doubt, make everything integer because it leaves you more space. And if you're looking for a character, it's got to be in single quotes. If you put it in double, it's something totally different. Yeah?
So when you say whenever you read a new phrase, you store it in your index or dictionary,
Mm-hmm.
is that a structure that you said?
Easiest way to do a dictionary is just a two-dimensional array. So you can say character, dictionary, 1,000 phrases, 201 bytes for each phrase. And you also need, you keep track of how many times each phrase occurs, so make an integer array that's parallel to this. Now if you say dictionary, bracket I, that's just a plain old string, right? It's a string of up to 201 bytes, so you can use this in printf, string copy, string compare, whatever, right? And the count for that phrase would just be count bracket I. Anything else? All right, so let's talk about PA5. So this is due 2 weeks from tomorrow, but I'm not here tomorrow, so I'm posting it today and talking about it. So PA5 is, you're going to build a travel reservation system. Okay, that's the punchline. This is a group project, so you can work in groups of up to 4 people. And it's a project that has very few specific requirements, okay? What's described in here is everything that you need to get full credit on this project. But there's a lot of room for creative expression, right? So feel free to explore the design space and do what you like with this, right? If you just want to get it over with and get your points, you can just follow this and be done with it, right? But use it as an opportunity to explore some of the things we've been doing in this course and take it in whatever direction you like. So what are the essential requirements? It's going to be written in Bash, and when the person runs your script, it should ask them for their name, okay? Give them a list of cities that they can leave from and ask them which city they're leaving from. Give them a list of cities they're traveling to and ask which one they're going to. Have them specify when they're leaving and returning and how many bags they want to check. Okay, so you get the basic traveler information from the user. And then in your directory there should be a file called reservations.txt. And this is where you're going to store all the reservations that you've made through this system. And each line of the file basically looks like this. It's separated by pipes. It's the name, departure and arrival city, departure and arrival date, number of bags. And if somebody has already made a reservation and they run your system again, instead of putting them in twice and having 2 reservations, you should replace their existing reservation with a new one. Okay, so if you look in this file, each person's name only appears once at most. That's the whole requirement. Okay, so you run the script, you go through these dialogues, put in this information, it updates reservations.txt, and now you have a file with everybody who's made a reservation on your system. So group projects, 1 to 4 people per group. Once they're submitted, starting on that Friday, your group will come up and present your reservation system to the class. So you'll take them through the basic behavior of your system, you'll demonstrate how it works, any features that you put in, you can demonstrate, and then do a quick run through of the code, in particular anything unusual in the code, anything that was particularly difficult or tricky or creative, you can talk about and highlight. And also talk about how you divided the work among the people in the group, right? So give that some thought before you form a group. What are the pieces going to be, who's going to do what, and so on and so forth. We'll talk about this in a minute. I just put this in as a reminder, but we're going to go through this presently. So submit on Canvas, make a tar file, upload your script. If it's multiple files, upload all of them in a single tar. Make absolutely sure that your main script has everybody's name in the beginning, okay? Because when it comes time to grade, I'll grade the project and then I'll go through the code and I'll look for the names in the beginning in a comment block, and the names that are in there get the grades. So if your group partner doesn't like you and doesn't put your name in, you don't get a grade. So pick friends for partners. Okay, so that's the basic setup. Makes sense what your goal is? So let's go through some details of this. Say what? It was posted yesterday. Well, let's see what I got. It's possible I posted it and didn't publish it. Yep. Okay, should be there. Thank you. This is what I love about Canvas. I'll publish. It's checked, but it's not checked. All right, cool. All right, that's up there. So, let's go through some details of this. So the command we're going to mostly use for this is something called Zenity. There's manual pages for this on Unix. I've posted the manual pages to Canvas, and you can find tons of information about this, but there's a lot of different versions of Zenity, and there's a little bit of flakiness around the way it works sometimes, and we're going to talk about how to do this. But the first thing to realize is you cannot use Zenity on the Linux server, okay, unless you set up an SSH tunnel to do X Windows, which I don't want to go into right now. So to do this, you're going to need to either have your own system that's running Linux or a system that's running Cygwin, okay? Using Zenity under Cygwin works, but it's not the most pleasant thing in the world. And I have instructions on here for how to set it up under Cygwin, but I haven't tried this lately, okay? If you're going to try to do Zenity under Cygwin, start today, okay? And find whatever problems you have. Shoot me an email and we'll talk about it by Monday. Do not try to do this a few days before it's due and start trying to install Zenity. Okay, it takes time unless you're really, really lucky. And last week of the quarter is not the time to be trying to multitask like this. Zenity works well on a straight Linux system. So far, it doesn't seem to work very well if you're running the built-in Linux that's available in Windows, but someone's looking into that to see how to do that. You need to set up an X Windows system again. If you run Linux in A VirtualBox, I believe that works well. But your best bet is just a Linux machine. So you're working in groups, right? If you don't have access to a Linux machine, try to work with someone who does. Okay, that's your easiest solution. So I'm going to do this from Linux. And from other systems, we'll deal with it case by case. But again, figure out like today or tomorrow how you're going to get Zenity running. What system are you going to use, and make sure you can do like the basic Zenity dialog. Okay. So Zenity -- entry is about the simplest Zenity command, and it pops up a little dialog box. And I tried to make this bigger last time, and I broke my laptop, so it's just going to be small for now. But it's a little dialog box. On the top it says add a new entry, and down here it says enter new text, and here's a box I can type into. And I can say hello, and when I exit the dialog box, it prints out whatever I typed in there. Okay, so first thing, there's all of this text coming up, all these error messages. Let's get rid of those. So after you finish all of the options on your Zenity command, do the following: 2 greater than space /dev/null. So 2 greater than says redirect what's called standard out. That's the other output stream. That's where error messages get displayed. So take all the stuff that's going to the error message output and send that to dev null. Dev null is an empty file. It's a black hole. It consumes things and it doesn't do anything with it. So if I repeat the same command, but I say 2 greater than /dev/null, all those error messages disappear. And now if I type something in here, it shows me whatever was typed in the dialog box. All right, so that's Zenity -- entry. Well, this is great if I want the user to type something and then have Zenity print that out on my display, but that's not very useful for building this reservation system. What we'd like to do is take what the user typed and somehow store it in a bash variable, right? So how can we do that? There's a way to do this in bash that's pretty straightforward. Back quotes, right? So if I say something like name equals back quote, and then I put all of this stuff inside back quotes, I can type something in here, and Zenity does not display anything. But remember, the back quotes say take whatever this command sends to standard out and treat that as the value of this back quote. So now we just said name equals whatever I just typed in, and if I echo $name, there's the string that I typed in the dialog box. So if I actually type in my name, Nick, and now I echo $name, there's my name. So this is probably the way you'll use Zenity most. Variable equals back quote. And then all of that stuff.
It prints it out in a little GUI.
Say what?
It prints it out in a little GUI. Is that what that does?
So this pops up a widget, and you type and say OK, and whatever you type goes into that variable. In this case, name. So there's manual pages for this, right? Do a man on Zenity. And there's 2 pieces of this to pay attention to. The first is the types of different dialogues that you can create. Okay, so we just did an entry dialogue, but we can also do a calendar dialogue, an error dialogue, a file selection dialogue, and so on and so forth. Okay, so these are all different things that Zenity will create for us, different visual objects that we can have the user interact with. And these may not all work, by the way. Okay, this is part of the discovery. And then there's these general options that we can use on most of these commands. So we can specify the title of the dialog box. We can specify the dimensions of the dialog box. We can specify a timeout, and so on and so forth. So let's play with some of these. So we'll do an entry dialog. Right, and so we'll put a title that says this is my widget, and it's a little small, but it says whatever your title is up here in the title of the window, right? We could specify a width if we wanted, so I can make this thing 400 characters wide, 400 pixels wide, right? And set that up accordingly. So it says enter new text. We can say dash dash text equals enter your name. And so instead of saying enter new text, it says enter your name, so we can control what that is. And there's another one we can use. Entry text, so entry text lets us specify a string, and that will appear by default in the box. Right, so here it just says type here, and it's selected, so if I start typing, it'll overwrite it. The usual stuff you get with widgets, right? We can specify a timeout. And so now it'll pop this up, but it'll wait, in this case, 5 seconds, and then it'll give up. So you can do the high pressure reservation system. It's like, tell me where you want to go, or we'll charge your credit card now. All right, well, so like most commands, Zenity returns a status code when it exits. So if we do this, and I say my name is Nick, I can look at $? and it's equal to 0. Okay, so that tells me I succeeded. So 0 is success. If you hit the cancel button, and then you look at $? It's non-zero. Okay, so a 1 generally tells you it was canceled. And same thing if I hit the X button up here, status will be 1. If I hang out and I specified a timeout and nothing happens, or I start typing but I'm not fast enough, right? And then I look at the status, it's equal to a 5. So, and this may not always be true, but it's true for this. 5 is timeout. So in general, right, 0 success, non-zero, some kind of non-success. Okay, some kind of unexpected condition. But it looks like 1 is cancel, 5 is timeout. And so under these general options, there's options for each different type of dialog. So there's a hide text option, hide the entry text. I'm going to get rid of the timeout because it's stressing me out, man. So here, I can type, but it doesn't show me what I'm typing. All right, so if you want to put in a password or something, you can do that. Height, width, window icon. I haven't played with the icons, but that's okay. Oh, we can play with the icons. Let's just see if this works. That is so unexciting. So there's a little thing up here in the upper left corner, right here, and I don't know what that is, but if you do window icon equals question, it changes into a little purple question mark. But depending on your OS, this may have different effects, right? So it may look more dramatic on a different system. So one of the things you want to do is play around with this, right? Before you start actually trying to write PA5, spend some time playing with Zenity. Okay, see what the different dialogues are, see what the different options are, because this will give you ideas for what you want to do with your program. Okay, it's like doing Scratch in 101, right? First you spend some time playing around with it, you see what the capabilities are, and that helps you decide what you're going to do. So same thing here. So let's look at some other Zenity options. So Zenity -- calendar displays a calendar dialog. And you can do the usual things. You can scroll through months, you can scroll through years. You can select a date and say OK, and it will show you month, day, year, whatever date was selected. Or you can select a date and say OK, or you can double click on a date. And by default, it highlights today's date, so if you just hit enter, it'll give you the current date. Right, so departure and arrival, you should use a calendar dialog to pick those up. So, and as usual, you can put dialog titles on, so enter departure date and so on and so forth. You can make a really big calendar. And again, right, you can pick up the status from the command to see if someone canceled or if they selected a date. So -- info just displays an empty box. But if you specify a file name, oh, it didn't work. That's annoying. Well, that worked. So, so I have this file called data. So if I do a text info and I say file name equals the name of a file, it shows the contents of the file up here. So if you want to display a bunch of information, you can do that. And normally you can't change this, but you can also say -- editable, and now you can go in, you can start typing in here. And none of that changes the file. It's just reading the file as the initial value in here. But if you make changes to this and you say OK, then Zenity outputs what the new contents of the file should be. So you could capture that and put it into a file and so on. So you can make graphical interfaces that let you actually do things like edit files. So there's an info box, says all updates are completed. I don't know what updates those are. So you can do a -text on there also and display whatever message you want. You can display a warning, and it gives you the yellow warning sign. And of course, you can do an error and get the horrifying red warning sign. What else is there? Right, and you can do things like right, I can set my text equal to backquote date, and I'm displaying a warning box with, oh, that's annoying. There we go. So text equals backquote date, and so it executes the date command, takes the result of that, and it uses that as a string for the text, right? And I needed to put that inside double quotes, otherwise it said dash dash text equals TUE space, and then all this other stuff, and it thought those were other commands to Zenity. So good use of double quotes here, right? I don't know if this will work or not. Ooh. Didn't like that. So a big part of this is really taking the stuff that you've already learned this quarter, the stuff you've already been doing in Linux, and just sort of putting it together in different ways. Okay, you already know enough to do all of PA5 and to get full credit on it, but it's sort of figuring out what it is that you've learned, what's in your toolkit that you can put together to do the different things you need to do. Okay, so Googling is not your answer in general if you're trying to do something for this assignment. It's likely you already know how to do everything you need to do. It's really figuring out how to put these pieces together. Okay. Right, so here's a sample reservations file. So I'm traveling, I'm leaving now, coming back tomorrow, from here to there, taking 6 bags. Odds leaving Tuesday, coming back Friday. Those would actually be month, day, year, but I want to type them in. And these odds going from Oz to Portland, right? When you do this, you're going to grab a bunch of information from the user, the name, cities, dates, bags, all this. And then you want to update this reservations.txt file, right? So if you have a new user who you've never seen before, you're just going to create a new record, put it at the bottom of reservations.txt. And that's pretty easy to do. If you just say greater than, that says take the result of this command on the left, which is an echo, and append it to that file, right? Instead of just creating a new file, stick it on the bottom. So you've got variables that have the traveler's name, departure and arrival, cities, dates, bags, and so on, right? You can create a record that has all that information with pipes in between by just echoing it out, and then just redirect it to reservations with a double grader. That'll stick it on the bottom, right? So now we've got a new record on the bottom. But before you do that, you want to know, is this person already in the reservation system? So suppose I say my name's Nick, and I'm making a reservation. You want to know, does Nick already have a reservation in the system? So you want to search for my name in this file. So the main command you want to use is grep. Grep is a search command, and it takes two arguments. It takes a pattern that you're searching for, and then it takes the name of a file. And it will search for this pattern, which is a regular expression, inside this file, and any lines in the file that match that pattern will get printed out. So if I say just grep nick reservations.txt, it finds my record in there. Okay. If I say grep for Tina, it doesn't find any records for Tina. Okay, so again, like other commands, grep returns a status code. So I search for Nick and it finds a record. If I look at $? It's 0. If I search for Tina and I look at $? It's non-zero. So after you use grep, you can tell if a person's in the file by checking $? And if the person is in the file, you're going to see this line of output. If you want to get rid of that, you can just redirect to dev null. And now it searches silently, but it still sets this status code. Okay, the other thing we can do with grep is we can say grep-v, and the v option reverses the behavior of grep. Grep looks for a pattern in this file and prints out every line that matches. Grep-v prints out every line that does not match that pattern. So if I do a grep-v nick on reservations.txt, it'll show me all the lines that don't match nick. In other words, it's showing me a new version of reservations with my reservation removed. If I do this for Tina, right, it'll show me every record because she's not in that file. But it doesn't change the actual file, right? Grep is reading from the file, looking for things that don't match the pattern and printing those out. If I have the V switch. But I'd like this to be my new reservations.txt. If my goal is to remove Nick from here before I put in a new reservation for Nick, right, I'd like to take this and I'd like to turn that into reservations.txt. So how could we do that?
Type the file.
Yeah, it would be nice if we could just take this and send the output to reservations.txt, but it won't let you do that. It'll give you an error message saying the input and the output are the same. But we can almost do that. So how can we get around that?
Making a temporary file?
Yeah, we just need a second file. So go ahead and copy the reservations file to a backup, and then do your grep on the backup file and put that into your reservations file. And now our file is like the original, but that record's been removed. Sorry?
What's the backup for?
It's a temporary file. So the goal is, or the setup is the following. That's what we'd like to do, right? We'd like to find every record that doesn't match this pattern in file, take all those records and store that in file, right? If we try to do that, it'll complain. Right, it'll say input file is also the output. So since it won't let us do this, what we can do is first copy file to some other file and then search that file and send the output to the original file. So I just called it file.backup, but you can do whatever you like. But if you call it file.backup, you got a nice little backup of your original reservation file before you do all your processing. And then if something goes wrong, you've got the original file still. So it becomes a feature, if you like.
So it allows us to
It allows us to do this basically. right? Read a file and take the results of processing and put it back in the file. But since Bash won't let you actually do that, we just do it in 2 pieces. So we make a copy of the file, we read from that, and we put the output into the original. All right, what else do you need in here? So this one's pretty hideous, but let's see if I can make it work. Hey, it worked. Okay. So here I have a drop-down list, right? So this Zenity command, what I basically did, I said I want a drop-down list. I want 2 columns. The first column is going to be called A. The second column is going to be called B. Okay, that's our headings A and B. And then I specified what I want in each column, each row, in order, left to right, top to bottom. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And let me put some more in here. Right, so I can scroll through this, and there's a tiny little scroll bar over here on the right. And if you select a row and say OK, Zenity outputs the things that were on that row, right? In this case, the 3. If I select this bottom row, it'll output the 11. So it's outputting the thing from column A corresponding to whatever row I selected. So if you just want a list of cities, so there's a dialog box for departure city, and I can click on one of these, and it'll show me whatever city you selected. But as usual, go through the man page, there's a lot of options, okay? And we can do radio button lists, we can do checklists. So there's a checklist version, but you got to add some other options to figure out what you're checking. You got to add another column. So mess with this stuff, okay? Play around with it. Let me show you one more. I haven't tried this on my system. So I'm doing -- notification and putting in a text box. And I got a little pop-up notification over there. All right, now this will vary. If you do this on Windows, you get a little icon in the upper corner, and when you hover your mouse over it, it shows you the text. All right, but we can interact with the underlying operating system in this way. So there's lots of things you can do. Okay, it's a fairly powerful tool, but it's also very particular about what it does and how you have to tell it to do that. In 2.23, when we're doing Java, we'll make full-blown GUIs, okay, using a package called Swing, a set of Java classes. And there we have absolute control over everything about how these things appear and so on. With Zenity, you know, basic things like the color of your dialog box, the border, the background, the shape, all that sort of stuff, we really don't have control over. Okay, it's all kind of bundled for us. But in Exchange, it's a very rapid development, right? It's one or two commands to pop up a dialog and read the response. So you get rapid development. You can work from the shell, but it's not very customizable. Okay, but for PA5, it's plenty good enough. Does that give you a basic idea? Okay, so so again, no class tomorrow. Take the time to work on either your lab or get started on PA5, and I will be back on Monday. All right, I'll let you out 90 seconds early.